English Planet. Appunti di inglese, a cura di Nicholas Youldon.
Good evening everybody, and welcome back to another lesson in the series of English Planet, learning English in the world of the invisible. This is your presenter and English teacher, Nick Youldon, and I promise to teach you the parts of English that they will never teach you in the school. Now, I have a question to ask immediately. Listen carefully. Have you ever been to England? Have you ever been to England? Correct answer: yes I have, no I haven't. Yes I have, no I haven't. Okay, good, correct answer, thank you very much. Conversation closed, no problem. Good night. Don't worry, I'm only joking, it's my English sense of humor. This is simply an illustration of the lesson from last week, where I introduced the present perfect. I have been to England, he has been to England. If you want a translation into Italian, what I am asking is: sei mai stato in Inghilterra? Sì, no. Why am I using the present perfect to resolve this conversation, this conundrum? I don't know you, I don't know your experience, I don't know your past, but I'm interested in you. So I need a question to open my experience of friendship. I'm interested in your past, yes, but only in order to know something and to be a friend with you now and in the future. So I offer you an invitation to talk to me and get to know each other, become familiar. If you answer, yes I have, no I haven't, stop, then I understand that you don't want to be my friend, you don't want to tell me about you, so our experience is closed. I may try again and ask you another question, or I may move on to another person. You may change your mind and tell me something about your past. Then I will explain how you do that. You could say, for example, yes, I went to London last year. Then I could say, oh, that's interesting. What did you see? Where did you go? Did you do anything interesting? Did you meet any new friends? If you're paying attention, you will see immediately that we are now talking in the past simple. I went to London. I met some friends. I visited the park in central London. I had dinner with the Queen in the gardens of Buckingham Palace. We ate cucumber sandwiches. The Queen likes cucumber sandwiches. As you can see, now we are speaking in the past simple. We are speaking in the past simple because we are talking about a past event, an identified past event, a visit to London last year. Last year is the key, is the time. Last year means we must associate verbs in the simple past. My initial question was made in the present perfect because I was interested in your present condition and your present situation, state of experience. I was not aware of any particular specified, identified event in the past. So my question was in the present perfect. This always happens in similar situations. Imagine an interview for a job. The person offering the job will ask you a question. Have you ever worked in an office before? Have you ever worked in an office before? Present perfect. Answer: Yes, I worked for an insurance company for 5 years. Yes, I worked for an insurance company for 5 years. Simple past. You use the simple past because you don't work in an insurance company now. Your work in an insurance company is finished, complete. You can use the same form of question to ask about an activity in the past which is of interest in the present. For example, have you bought some wine for the party? Have you bought some wine for the party? You say this when your friend or husband or companion, whoever, arrives at home and you want to know if there is wine for the party, which is this evening, and you don't know if wine exists or not, if wine has been purchased or not, so you ask, have you bought the wine? The actual information you are looking for is, do we have wine for the party? The only possibility for having wine is, or was, to buy the wine before now. So your question is, have you bought the wine? You're not interested in the past event, buying the wine, where, when, why, how. You're only interested in, is there wine here now? You can ask, have you cleaned the car? Your real question is the car clean? You can ask, have you finished your work? The real question is, can we go to the cinema now? You can ask, have you seen John? And your real question is, do you know where John is? Or where is John? Or why is John not here? You can ask, have you studied English grammar? Your real question is, why do you not know English grammar? These are some typical examples of how you use the present perfect in English. But these examples demonstrate, if you are Italian, for example, that instead of translating directly from Italian to English, you should understand that English people, or in any other foreign language, they may use a different form of the language to make the same question. It's not simply a question of translating. The examples here again are all in the affirmative form, but you can also make questions in the negative form. For example, if I am surprised by the fact that you don't know something of English grammar, I may prefer the form, haven't you studied English grammar? Haven't you studied English grammar? If you ask the question, have you studied English grammar, in the positive, this is a neutral question for information only. On the other hand, if you say, haven't you studied your English grammar, then you are expressing some emotion, some surprise. You expect the answer, of course I have studied English grammar. So why don't you understand the grammar, the question? Haven't you studied your English grammar? It expresses a mild form of outrage, shock, surprise. Haven't you finished your work? That's a surprise because it's 10 o'clock in the evening, it's time to go to bed. Haven't you finished your work? Haven't you prepared the examination? That's a surprise because the examination is now. The time to prepare was yesterday or the day before. Haven't you prepared your examination? If you think about it carefully, I'm sure you will find that the same system operates in Italian in the same way. To make a negative question is a form of surprise. Remember, of course, that in none of these situations are we interested in reality in the past activity. We are only interested in the effect of the activity in the present. If you haven't studied for the exam, then you are not now prepared for the exam. If you haven't finished your work, then you cannot now go and sleep. Of course, the same form works with all the persons, singular and plural. As an example, have I been to London? Have you been to London? Has he been to London? Has she been to New York? Has it been to Budapest? Have we been to Rome? Have you been to Lisbon? Have they been to Sydney? It may seem that the question, have I been to London, is a stupid question, or have we been to London is equally a stupid question because it involves the first person. But there are situations when this could be a valid question. It may also be valid for people who have lost their memory, for example. Have I been to London? Oh, really? But seriously, there are many occasions when you need to ask the question, have I, blah 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 blah. The important thing to remember is that we can use the present perfect as long as we do not have specific information, or we are not interested in specific information about an event in the past. We can talk about past events on various occasions quite happily without using the past. For example, I have been to America on several occasions. I don't specify the occasions, but I do say that I am a person who knows America, or at least part of America. On the other hand, if someone asks you the general question, have you been to Timbuktu? And you have, then you must answer giving the specific date and using the simple past. You say, yes, I went to Timbuktu last year. I stayed in Timbuktu for a month because it's a very long journey and I was tired and I needed to rest. I saw a lot of interesting things and I met a lot of interesting people in Timbuktu. I had a wonderful time in Timbuktu and I want to go back again next year. All of these phrases use the simple past because I am describing an event which is fixed in the past, last year. So, have you had enough for this evening? Have you learnt what I've told you? This lesson is particularly interesting to people from the north of Italy and Piedmont for the simple reason that in Italian they can say "Ho visto John ieri e mi hai invitato a bere una birra." Now you cannot translate that directly into English using the present perfect. You cannot say, I have seen John yesterday and he has invited me for a beer. That is wrong, incorrect, no good. In English, yesterday cannot use the present perfect. Yesterday uses the past simple. I saw John yesterday and he invited me for a beer. For many Italian speakers in the north of Italy, this particular example is a kind of banana skin which you can slip up on. You cannot translate the Italian passato prossimo into the English present perfect. It doesn't necessarily work. Well, we have to pause now for a little advertisement. Stay tuned to Radio Dreamland. I'll be back very shortly with the second part, where I will just chat to you in English. Be back soon.
Meditazione planetaria del martedì. Radio Dreamland si unisce all'iniziativa della meditazione planetaria del martedì sera, organizzata dal New Earth Circle. Ogni martedì sera, alle 21, vi invitiamo a partecipare alla meditazione planetaria dedicata a Madre Terra e a tutti i suoi figli di qualsiasi specie. Ognuno può unirsi al cerchio planetario dei meditanti partecipando da soli o con i propri cari, per una testimonianza di pace e di spiritualità che abbracci tutto il pianeta, per un atto d'amore verso Madre Terra, per un mondo antispecista. Unitevi con noi in meditazione, seguendo la Nassinar, la musica del vuoto eseguita al flauto da Giancarlo Barbadoro. Ogni martedì alle 21. Per informazioni www.newearthcircle.org. Radio Dreamland. Share the vision.
Okay, back to the studio. That was a short break for some important information from Radio Dreamland. Radio Dreamland, a station which tries to bring you a different view on the world of the invisible, the world of eco-spirituality. This is Nick Youldon again, the second part of this program. I'll tell you some interesting new developments concerning Stonehenge, the wonderful megalithic site in the south of England. So, what's the news about Stonehenge? Well, effectively, I've got some breaking news. This is just appearing in the newspapers, but it has been reported by the BBC, by CNN in America, and the Daily Mirror in England. Remember that Stonehenge is a very large stone circle with very large stones, and it has been where it is for approximately 5,000 years. So, why are they talking about it again? What's happened? What's new? Well, it seems that a team of archaeologists has been working for more than, about 2 or 3 years, I understand. And they have discovered the idea that the stones, many of the stones from Stonehenge, were not originally placed at Stonehenge, but they were moved from a point in Wales. I am happy to report that these archaeologists are not what you could consider classical archaeologists working with imagination and fantasy, but they are specialists using technological equipment to assess and understand better what the archaeological and geological situation is. For those experts out there, it is actually quite well known that the stones were not originally from the area where Stonehenge is placed. It is quite well known that the stones were moved a long distance from a point in Wales. So, what's the new discovery here? Have they just discovered hot water, or what is it? Well, the difference here is that they are saying that the stones did not come originally from a quarry, which means they were not new stones when they were placed in Stonehenge. They were, in fact, stones which had previously existed on a previous megalithic site, in fact a very long way from Wiltshire, from Stonehenge's location, and very close to the Atlantic coast of the west coast of Wales. The specialists and many other experts are very excited about this discovery because it says that in a remote position, an isolated position in the west of Wales, 5,000 years ago, there was a stone circle the same size or bigger than Stonehenge on a hill used by a population which has literally disappeared from history, an invisible population. The methods and the technological equipment being used by the team are highly technological. They are not primitive tools. They're extremely technologically advanced, and they are capable of analyzing stone, soil, and various other things, bones, for example, parts of human remains, which can then analyze from a new approach, in a new way. They can understand better what happened in the stone circle previous to Stonehenge, and why it was then moved to Stonehenge. There is no existing circle in the original site, but the specialists discovered and have analyzed the traces, the holes in the ground where stones were placed, and they can prove that the stones which are at Stonehenge were originally placed in that position. One of the large stones which stands now in Stonehenge corresponds exactly in cross-section to a hole in the ground on the site in West Wales. So it can be said safely, securely, that that stone was originally in a position in Wales. The team of specialists and archaeologists who worked for more than 2 years, hard work in difficult conditions to make this discovery, the team was led by Professor Mike Parker Pearson. And he said, he explained that exactly that he can prove that there was a prehistoric megalithic site in West Wales which was occupied, which was used for approximately 400 years by a local population. This population has apparently disappeared. That is, there is no documentation or no records referring to the existence of a population in that area. This is an area of West Wales which in modern times has a very small population. Professor Mike Parker Pearson is hypothesizing or saying, as are other experts are saying, that this was a densely populated area 5,000 years ago. But official British history makes no reference to any important population living in that area at that time. Obviously, the professor and his team were very interested and very devoted to the fact of something which is very interesting also to me. Not so much the fact of stones and Stonehenge, but what those stones say about human history, about the people who lived in that area a long time ago, who have become effectively an invisible population, people who are we know nothing about, we have no information, they do not exist. But, as the professor and his team correctly say, they did exist. They constructed a megalithic site which, as all megalithic sites, has something to do with human existence, with existence within the cosmos, something to do with astronomy, something to do with spirituality. These people 5,000 years ago constructed an elaborate, sophisticated site, and not only that, they for some reason dismantled it, took it down and moved it 250 kilometers with no large trucks or heavy moving machinery or helicopters. They moved it, I don't know, by hand in some way, or by magic, 250 kilometers towards London, and reconstructed it in a new position. Why? That is the question. I can't answer this question, obviously, but I can look for an answer, and I can reflect on the mystery surrounding the information that we have. The period of time where we're looking at here, 5,000 years ago, corresponds to the period of the Egyptian civilization. We have a lot of information, a lot of data about the Egyptian civilization, but we don't have any information about a civilization which seems to have been important. Obviously not the Egyptian Empire, but it seems to have been an important civilization existing in Wales at the same time. The civilization, the people living in Wales were not primitive people, were not isolated groups living in a forest and surviving on killing rabbits and collecting fruit. They were obviously intelligent, educated, sophisticated people who were aware of where they were living, they were aware of what they were doing, they were aware of their position in nature, they were aware of the fact that they lived on a planet and that they had some connection to the cosmos and to a spiritual existence, not simply survival existence in a forest. They were also capable of sophisticated and complicated construction work, such as that involved in building a stone circle, dismantling a stone circle, moving a stone circle, and reconstructing a stone circle, with precision and skill which is admired today. Anyone who has been to see the stones at Stonehenge remains surprised and shocked by the nature of the construction of those stones. They are not simply blocks of stones placed one on another in some haphazard fashion. They are not the work of a primitive people. Here I quote Professor Parker Pearson, who believes that Neolithic people in general were attracted to Salisbury Plain, that's where Stonehenge is located, because they believed the landscape to be supernatural and a good place to celebrate the solstices. So they moved their stone circle 250 kilometers to the east because they wanted to be in a more supernatural place. This, I think, is hardly primitive behavior. Interesting information in this respect, in this context, comes also from a BBC documentary research which was carried out on human remains found at Stonehenge. Scientists have discovered that when human bodies are cremated, a certain temperature will lock their chemical characteristics, and these chemical characteristics can then be analyzed at a later date, and people can be located to places, the places where they originally lived, for example. Using this technology, for example, you can measure the level of strontium found in a cremated cranium from a human, and measure this against the level of strontium found in geographical areas, different geographical areas in Britain, for example. Using this possibility, this system, the experts speaking on the BBC documentary demonstrated that humans found in Stonehenge, who were obviously who were cremated at Stonehenge in 3,000, 4,000 years ago, it can be demonstrated that those people originally came from Wales and not from Salisbury Plain or around Stonehenge. What does this say? Well, it says that 3, 4, 5,000 years ago, people in Britain were moving freely over long distances. They were not isolated groups, I say, of primitive people living in a forest. They were traveling, they were moving, and they were taking things with them. There was immigration and migration happening. As a matter of fact, I mean, we also know from separate sites, separate research that at that time in Europe in general, populations were moving. They were also moving artifacts, jewelry, ornaments, articles of value, for example, long distances, not just within Britain, but even from the Far East, from the Middle East. They were coming from Constantinople to Stockholm, for example, in Sweden. So people were traveling, people were trading, people were doing business. There obviously was a very extended and highly developed civilization. This research and this information we have now, additional information about our past and human history is interesting because it demonstrates that people, even what we have always presumed to be primitive people, were civilizations who lived, who understood where they lived, who were not involved in simple survival in a forest. They were interested in the supernatural. They were interested in the universe they lived in. They had a spiritual existence, and this for them was very, very important enough to move a large stone circle over a great distance. This tells me, for example, that I am possibly being primitive if I believe that I can live my life isolated in a modern city, living in a block of flats and going to work every day without considering the wider aspects of existence. I believe I need to know these things for my own personal well-being. The work here, the long years of research done on this aspect of Stonehenge are paralleled or echoed here in Piedmont by our own founder Giancarlo Barbadoro, who carried out an amazing amount of work and very important work on the analysis of what was legendary, now historic city of Rama, and the civilizations who obviously developed what was an amazing construction. The evidence is there. The key to well-being is there. It's all around us, but we have to go and look for it. Now, once again, I'm afraid time is up. I have to request that you return next week for another lesson on English Planet. Keep in touch with Radio Dreamland through the website and through the transmissions. In the meantime, this is Nick Youldon wishing you a very pleasant evening, what remains of it. Remember to share the vision and stay tuned to Radio Dreamland. Good night.